Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me? That better? Thank you very much. I am actually surprised. I figured I'd have a few people listening to me yesterday because of the rain. And I started my talk yesterday by saying, thanks to the perfect storm, people look at me funny when I complain about the weather. I was actually embarrassed to buy an umbrella yesterday in Edgartown. It's like, God, I hope they don't recognize me. So I'm imagining that most of you know a little bit about me. I'm also imagining that there are probably very few people here who have read all of my work and therefore know every thought I've ever had. More of you probably don't know a lot about me, so I'm thinking that some background is in order. I was raised on and off the coast of Maine, where boats and fishing are the way of life. I spent my early childhood trying to catch anything that swam or crawled around the shores surrounding my home. I had the idyllic childhood. Friends of mine would say I've had a very long childhood, but I can live with that. When I was at an age where kids learned to ride bikes, I learned how to row. When 10-speed bikes were all the rage, I had my first 10-horse outboard motor. And so it seemed, when I turned 19 and was in desperate need of money for college, it seemed a very natural step for me to go commercial fishing. And I stepped aboard a commercial sword fishing boat and headed east of the Grand Banks of Newfoundland for my first 30-day adventure. And it was at the age of 19 that I fell in love with my life. I literally fished my way through school. And back then I said I was fishing for tuition. Much to my parents' dismay, I graduated from Colby College with my degree in English and embarked upon my career as a commercial fisherman and started fishing year-round. Worked my way up to the captain's chair in a very traditional way. Stayed on the same boat long enough to become first mate. And when the owner of that boat bought a second boat, that was my first opportunity as a captain. Captained many different boats, many different years, many different fisheries. Most of my fishing career was chasing swordfish around the North Atlantic Ocean, anywhere from Brazil to Labrador, so the entire North Atlantic Ocean. I was running a boat in 1991 called the Hannah Bowden, and I encountered what was then known as the Halloween Gale of 1991. Later became known as the perfect storm in the book and subsequent movie. People ask all the time, how did the perfect storm change your life? And I think my answer is sometimes a little weird because the weather event did nothing to change my life significantly. I had been fishing for many years by the time I encountered the perfect storm. I was very much aware of the hazards and dangers of fishing. I was all too familiar with boats and people who are lost at sea. The book about the storm I hold responsible for some really drastic changes in my life. Not the whole book, just one passage. And I never miss an opportunity to quote Sebastian Junger, what he said about me. And you can imagine how this would change one's life. He said, "The Hannah Bowden is skippered by a Colby College grad named Linda Greenlaw. Not only is Greenlaw one of the only women in the business, she's one of the best captains, period, on the entire East Coast. Year after year, trip after trip, she makes more money than anyone. When the Hannah Bowden unloads her catch in Gloucester, swordfish prices plummet halfway around the world." Well, I love that part. As you can imagine, it's been a very tough image for me to live up to, and I think one of the more humorous changes that very generous portrayal brought my way was in people's initial reactions to me. If they're aware of my role in the perfect storm, after hello, the next thing I hear is, "Wow, we thought you'd be a lot bigger." And there's genuine disappointment upon meeting me for the first time. I'm sure some of you are already disenchanted, and for that I apologize. More significant change that portrayal brought my way was this. I got in from lobster fishing one night and hit the button on the answering machine, and I'll remember it like it was yesterday. "Hi, Linda. This is Emily Bessler calling from Simon & Schuster. We've read The Perfect Storm, and we're really intrigued with this female fisherman thing you have going on. Do you want to write a book?" And at the time, I thought, no, that sounds like a lot of work. I never had any intention or desire. I never aspired to do anything other than fishing. I was pretty happy with this female fisherman thing I had going on. I never even returned the phone call. Well, keep in mind that The Perfect Storm was on top of every bestseller list on the planet, and within a week's time, I had 3 identical calls, major publishers in New York saying, "We've read The Perfect Storm, will you write a book?" And I had to understand what an opportunity I was being handed. I have friends who would kill for the opportunity to have a book published. I have friends who write beautifully, yet they get rejection letter after rejection letter, understanding that a lot of those letters are coming from people who haven't even looked at their material. So how lucky was I to be handed this gift of an opportunity to not only write a book that was going to be published, but the very first thing I learned about the life of a writer, at least for one that's going to be published, was there this thing called an advance. You can't imagine 2 more different worlds in those of a commercial fishing boat captain and a published author, but this advance thing was something that totally blew my mind. I actually got money before I did any work. In fishing, you're lucky if you ever get paid, so that was a pretty amazing thing. It took me a year to write my first book, The Hungry Ocean, and I can honestly say it's the most difficult year I have ever spent, bar none. Nobody was more surprised than I was when The Hungry Ocean became a bestseller, and that success led to opportunity number 2. I was invited to write my second book, The Lobster Chronicles, very much chronicling a lobster season, a year, life on Isle Ho, a very small island where I live, an island like Martha's Vineyard, but not like Martha's Vineyard at all. We have a 44 year-round residence, 1-room schoolhouse, 4 kids in the school, kindergarten through 8th grade. So, just scale it down a lot. Anyway, success of Lobster Chronicles led to book number 3, All Fishermen Are Liars. It is a title that served me very well until I was standing trial in Canada for international fishing violations, and it's the only time, seriously, that I regretted the title, and I regretted it in a big way. So on and on it goes. Yes, I've written a couple of mysteries on how do the mysteries come about. Success of the nonfiction. The publishers say, "Hey, this is going great. Can you write another book?" And I think I've written 3 books that are very much memoirs. I am so sick of Linda Greenlaw, I can't stand it. No, I need to live a little more. I can't write another book about myself. And so they suggested that I try nonfiction. And I thought at the time, nonfiction has got to be easier. You just make shit up, right? How hard can that be? Well, I learned very quickly how wrong I was about that. It seems that starting with a totally blank slate where anything is possible is actually a lot more difficult, at least for me, than having the outline in my head and writing about my own experiences. A couple of cookbooks with my mom, very proud of those, and I will say it was really a great deal of fun working with my mother on a major, beautiful cookbook. My mom co-authored her first book at the age of 70, so that was a very special experience for me. So here I am with book number 9, Lifesaving Lessons, Notes from an Accidental Mother, and I've done a fair amount of promoting with the book and some interviews, this and that. And one of the things that I keep hearing is people's opinions that this book is a departure for me. I disagree. I think my life has been quite a departure. I write about my life, so in that way, I think Life-Saving Lessons is very much in keeping with my other work. My hopes for Life-Saving Lessons are a couple of them. I truly hope that people who have enjoyed my other work will also enjoy Life-Saving Lessons. And I hope that people who have been hesitant to pick my books up in the past because they don't want to read a book about fishing will see Life-Saving Lessons as the departure that I'm saying that it's not, and will give it a try. I don't really enjoy reading, but no, not in general. I really love to read, but I don't usually read at my readings. But in this case, I think I will read very briefly, and I really hope that you have questions for me because Q&A is actually enjoyable for me. Get this down. Confrontation was imminent. I didn't recall ever fighting with my mother the way Mariah and I are now, but I was a different kid. Weird, Mariah would say. The heated arguments she and I were having, I was certain, shook me harder and had more lasting effects on me than they did on the 120-pound, 15-year-old Spitfire who was now quickly closing the gap between us. Mariah seemed to thrive on drama, while I cowered from it. It was a mismatched battle at best. When I complained to girlfriends more experienced in the rearing of daughters, they assured me that whatever tiff Mariah and I had gone through was nothing compared to those they had experienced, and that all of this was absolutely normal. My girlfriends did not understand. Maybe if I ignore her, she'll walk right by and leave me in peace to clean and paint the bottom of the skiff I was now forcing my attention onto. She would never offer to help. That was out of the question. No, I thought, Mariah did not seem to have the gene for motivation. It used to bother me that she could lie on the couch and watch TV while I mowed the lawn, did dishes, or vacuumed the floor around her after I'd put in a long day of fishing. But I'd come to realize that the wrath of her disposition when asked to pitch in was not worth whatever assistance she rendered. I wondered if that made me an enabler. I squatted behind the upside-down boat, the perfect shield, and scraped tiny barnacles and dried green stuff from the waterline with a wide putty knife. There'll be no ignoring her, I thought as she drew near. She stopped with the skiff between us, took a deep breath in preparation, and exhaled audibly. Oh yeah, she's pissed, I thought. Did you shut off my texting? The syllables were like bullets fired from an automatic weapon, rapid and individually articulated to avoid any doubt as to what was asked. Yes, first thing this morning, I answered, bracing myself. Oh, that is so lame. Why? My immediate thought was that my mother would never have tolerated this tone from me. I couldn't imagine that Mariah needed to hear the reasons yet again for the no texting rule. But I knew that if I did not respond quickly, she'd fill the void with total exasperation. Because you didn't follow the rules, and we can't afford $700 phone bills every month. Your rules are unreasonable. This is totally unfair, and I told you I would pay for the overages. Call me old-fashioned, but I think 3,700 text messages a month is excessive, especially when the text messenger is a full-time student. This is stupid. I cringed at her use of an adjective that had been absolutely forbidden by my own mother. You have to turn it back on. I can't live this way. Now Mariah was sobbing uncontrollably. Her shoulders shook and her chest heaved. She gasped for a breath and changed tactics, blurting out, "There's nothing to do here. I'm bored." Ouch, I thought. She knew how I detested her statements of boredom. I always took it so personally. It was as if she were telling me that I'm boring. And I'm not bored, really. Everywhere I looked around my property, I saw a project. I was literally surrounded by work. Bored? I'd love to be, even for just a minute. I wish Mariah could teach me to be that. Maybe I didn't have the gene for mothering, but anyone's maternal instincts might naturally get confused by this stage of a child's development. I never knew how to deal with the crying. There was an awkward silence except for the sniffling. Weary and fearing going another round, I secretly wished Mariah would spin abruptly on her heel and stomp off as she always did. I picked up the masking tape and began to stretch it along the waterline where the skiff's blue and gray paint met. You can't simply dismiss me like that. I am not a member of your crew. Well, that's for sure, I thought as I kept taping without looking up. No member of my crew would ever talk to me like that. Please turn my texting back on. Now the tears had dried and Mariah's tone had changed from fighting to pleading. I'll follow the rules this time, I promise. No, I'm sorry. Last month was your third and final last chance. Your texting is off until I see your grades. You cannot be serious. This is so stupid. Mariah's face was getting red again. Here comes the next flood of tears, I thought. Her eyes darted wildly back and forth between me and the house. Oh, take the house, I thought. Please take the house. I knew from past experience that Mariah would eventually retreat, and she'd miraculously be wearing a smile by lunchtime. But this time, her departure would not be without a parting shot. In total frustration, she grabbed a quart of paint, then turned and hurled it into the woods so far that I wondered if I'd ever find it. You are not my mother. I want to go home. So, thank you. Oops, glasses. The stork left a 15-year-old girl on my doorstep. And, not going to, tell you play by play exactly how that happened, but to make a long story that's in the book short, when I was touring with my last book, Seaworthy, I was asked, what are you working on and what's it about? And I always described Life-Saving Lessons as a horror story with a happy ending. And truly, the scene that I just read is very representative of the first 3 years as this young girl's legal guardian. How does that come about? I told you I live on a very small island. This young girl moved to Isle Ho at the age of 10 with a man we were told was her uncle. And they moved, I say in the book, Memphis, Tennessee, but it was actually Kansas City, Missouri, not that it really matters. Anyone coming to live on Isle Ho as a year-round resident is welcomed with open arms. We have a huge depopulation, problem, and fewer and fewer kids in the one-room schoolhouse. So here's somebody with a girl. We have 4 boys in the school. Here's a girl for the school. Yay. Everyone fell in love with this little girl. 5 years into their stay on Isle Ho, things came to light. That we all became aware that she was living with a pedophile, and he wasn't her uncle at all. So that's the basis of Life-Saving Lessons. How did I become her guardian? When her abuser was arrested, which is a big part of this book, we don't have any law enforcement on my island, so it's quite a trick to get anything going on. When he was arrested, we had a very informal town meeting. What's going to happen to this young girl? The natural course of action would be that she'd go into a foster care program, and at the age of 15, wow, that probably wouldn't be a very happy scene. So we had this meeting, and everyone in my community said, Linda, you've always wanted kids. You have a spare bedroom. You take her. And it was that simple. I thought at the time that it would be a very temporary arrangement. Sure, she can sleep at my house while we figure out as a community what to do with this kid. I had pretty much given up at that point in my life on having children. I was 46, and I gave up sword fishing 3 different times. And the last time that I gave it up prior to taking on this young girl was all of my friends are married with children. I had a wonderful childhood. I wanted to recreate what I had. I wanted to get married. I wanted to have children. And I say in the Lobster Chronicles that my family planning was not very well planned. I moved home to Isle Ho where there were 3 single men. 2 are gay, 3rd one's a cousin. That is not an exaggeration. So at 46, I'm happy hauling lobster traps. I'm not going to have kids, and bang, here I have a 15-year-old daughter. It took 3 years for me to actually call her my daughter, and the same 3 years for her to actually refer to me as anything even close to a parental figure. As you can probably imagine, nothing in my career as a commercial fisherman or as a writer prepared me for motherhood. As a commercial fisherman, captain of a boat, it's not a democracy in any way, shape, or form. So the cliches to suggest to parents how to parent, and the one that comes to mind is to choose your battles, just wasn't in my playbook. So being absolutely unbending wasn't really the best parenting skill. And on the other extreme was my life as a writer, in which I get into a bubble and I let nothing penetrate from the outside. I do not enjoy writing. It's very difficult work for me, for anyone. So I can't let anything, distract me, because distraction is so welcome when I'm writing. So again, totally ignoring everything around you, not really good parenting skills. The one thing I had in my favor was my relationship with my parents. So I have a great relationship with my parents to this day, always have. So I knew what it was supposed to look like. I have been accused all my life of beating the dead horse. Most of the time that's a bad thing, but in this situation with this kid, a very difficult teen, not giving up and beating the dead horse was the key to our now very successful, loving relationship. I'd love to take your questions. Before I do, I always like to mention the title of my first book. I never miss this opportunity either, The Hungry Ocean. Many of you are probably aware that title is from a Shakespearean sonnet. I've learned through the course of my travels that title means different things to different people. And I can say that personally, that title refers to the ocean's ability to totally consume. I have been fishing since I was 19. I have been consumed by it. I know it sounds cliche to say you're drawn to or taken with something. I like the way I feel when I'm at sea. I am passionate about catching fish. And as proud as I am to be recognized as an author, nothing makes me prouder than saying that I'm a fisherman. I guess that's not going to change. So I thank you for coming, and I'm thank you. Delighted to answer any questions you might have. Any questions? Yes. Right, and they say it takes a village to raise a child, and on a really small island, I suppose any small town, it's true. We all take a great interest in every kid on the island, and one of the things that I think was one of the worst things personally for me about learning about this pedophile was I started questioning the way I interact with the kids on the island. I would never go by a kid without hugging them or patting them on the butt or ruffling their hair. I would make a kid get off a bike and hug me, always. And I started questioning that. I said, wow, people, this 15-year-old girl, if we're traveling, I want to expose her to some things that are normal. And do I need to get separate hotel rooms? Are people going to think I'm a predator, because I have this just really paranoid. And everyone on the island sort of felt that way. And yeah, so we both had a huge support system. I say that it's the first time in my life I have had female friends. I'm used to being around guys. I've worked with, for, around men. My friends are men until this situation. The women on the island pulled together. Suddenly I have these female friends. I never knew how wonderful a female friend could be. I have a mother and sisters, but it's not the same. So that huge support system, and she is a really lucky kid. She had an opportunity to go to an exclusive boarding school. She got counseling once a week, not with the school, but it was walking distance, and she really enjoyed that. She's going to be a senior in college through her college years. She's gotten counseling off and on. Last year, she hasn't had any. She called once saying, maybe she was going to find someone. She's lovely. She's beautiful. She's well-adjusted. Great young woman. Yes. Was there a turning point? Yeah, and I write about it, and this, it may seem so simplistic, but I never would have thought about it, but in the process of writing about this experience, you have to reach some conclusions and dig a little bit deeper than you would like just thinking about something. And the turning point was her high school graduation was within a month of her 18th birthday. Now, legal guardianship legally terminates on the ward's, and that's such a terrible word, the legal ward's 18th birthday. And this kid had been bumped around, tossed around many different times, and I'm sure she felt that on her 18th birthday and high school graduation that was going to be the end of our relationship. See you later, I don't know what you're going to do. Even though I tried to impress upon her that was not the case. She's a teenage girl, and anyway, I went to her high school graduation, and everything was always so awkward up to that point. And she got in the car, and we're driving back to the island. And up to that point, she kind of referred to Kansas City, Missouri as home, and which was hurtful to me because I wanted her to think of, the Greenlaws as her family. We got in the car. She has all her stuff. We're on our way back to Idaho, and her phone rang, and she said, hey, I can't talk right now. I'm in the car with my mom. We're going home. I was like, wow. Yeah. So that definitely was a turning point, and I really think, as I said, I've always been accused of beating a dead horse, and I just, I'm not one to give up. Usually it's not good, and this time, this one circumstance, it was a good thing. Yes. Okay, the question is about regulations and, okay, I am, the quick answer to that, which really isn't a quick one, is that my opinion is that the future of the fish is rosy. The future of the fishermen, not so much. The fishermen of this country, whether it's commercial or recreational, are the most highly monitored, regulated, managed, and patrolled group of fishermen on the planet. Yes, as a commercial fisherman, I want to know that there's a future in commercial fishing, but there's so few fishermen left. It seems, you're rebuilding stocks, and there are so many success stories. There are also stories that are not success stories, and I think the last few years, people are finally understanding that of all the ills in the ocean, maybe overfishing is not the number one bad thing. There are things, climate change, pollution, loss of habitat, all of these things that affect the fishing, the resource. So it's good that people are now understanding that. Good regulations, bad regulations. I can give you one of each. A good regulation. The North Atlantic swordfish stock, which I happen to know the most about of any of the other fisheries because I've been involved in it in so long. That stock is at, even the scientists are saying, 100% maximum sustainable yield. That is truly a success story. To what do you attribute that to? I attribute it to the mandatory use of circle hooks in the longline industry. You think, of a fishing hook, you think of a J, the old-fashioned J hook. The circle hook was originally designed to minimize interaction with marine mammals, turtles, things that you're not supposed to be catching. The beautiful side effect of the circle hook is that everything, like 98% of what you catch, is hooked in the corner of the mouth. Therefore, it comes up alive on the line, as opposed to a J hook that the fish can ingest. They come up dead. If you catch a small swordfish, too small to keep, and it's hooked in the corner of the mouth, you pop the hook out, it's catch and release. It's been a wonderful thing for the industry. Bad regulation, on the other hand, is something like a ground fisherman. You're allowed to have 400 pounds of codfish a day, period. I don't care how good a fisherman you are, how smart you are, how high-tech the electronics are in your boat. You are going to have single tows or sets that you have in excess of 400 pounds of codfish. You have to throw dead fish overboard. It does nothing for saving a resource. Fishermen have pleaded for years, so don't let us sell the excess. So there's no incentive to catch it. Let us bring it in. It's dead. Let us bring it in and give it to soup kitchens, schools, hospitals. We are a very fish-hungry country. Number one killer of women in this country is heart disease. We're suffering from a national obesity crisis. We're fatter than we've ever been. And it just really bothers me that there are groups of people saying, don't eat this type of fish or that type of fish. And I'm getting a little long-winded here. I am sorry. But, I have a chance. You asked. If something is available to you, because I get this question all the time. I don't know what I'm supposed to be eating. Is it in the red list? Is it on the, the people from Monterey Bay? Like, what the hell? Should I eat it? If it's available to you, it has been through such scrutiny. Eat it and enjoy it. So thanks for asking that question that I didn't really answer. Thanks, yeah. Okay. Yeah, my experience in Kenya. About a year ago, I was hired as a consultant by the World Bank. They're working on a fisheries development program off of Kenya. And it was kind of scary because we're fishing very close to Somalia. And, of course, piracy is the big thing there. But, I was a little frightened until I saw the boats that I was going to do baseline fishing. So my job was to go and see what is there for the resource, use their boats, their gear, and then recommend, what we can do to, have a sustainable fishery and have a product that could be exported out of Kenya, which would be great for the Kenyans, make more money on their fish. They are so primitive there. I was fishing on a dhow, which is a wooden sailing vessel, and lots of fish. And, nothing is mechanized. Everything's by hand, very primitive. It was like going back 100 years. So it was really a very cool and interesting experience for me. And I immediately got over the, what about the pirates? When I saw the boat, that I was no self-respecting pirate's going to bother, these fishing boats. It's just no way. These people are very poor and they just don't have anything. So it was a good experience. And the fishermen of Kenya are very skeptical that anyone could really be helping them, and their idea of the government being very corrupt and this money is never going to get, trickle down to us. And sadly, a year later, that seems to be true, because I haven't been invited back to train them with the new boats that were supposed to be built with the new gear. So that was my Kenya experience. Yes. How I found a husband. Okay, my husband, he's a boat builder in Maine, not on the island, but on the mainland, a little town called Surrey. He builds these beautiful boats called Westmac, Wesmac. They're gorgeous. Anyway, I was delivering a boat to this boat shop for a friend of mine because the boat needed he wanted to have it extended from a 42-footer to 46-footer. And I arrived in Surrey and the tide wasn't right for hauling the boat, so I put the boat on a mooring, and this very handsome, great guy rowed me ashore. And it sounds kind of corny, but it was an immediate connection. I thought, wow, this guy's just so wonderful. There's no way that he's single. And then, come to find out he was. And things happened very quickly. I met him in January. We got married in September. When I announced to my friends and my family that I was getting married, I got a lot of, well, isn't this kind of sudden? I'm like, I'm 51. How long do you want me to wait? I've never been married before. Let's tie the knot before he gets to know me too well, kind of thing. And there's a little story that goes along with this that I actually told yesterday, and it's kind of neat. 5 minutes, okay. It's not that long a story. I can probably tell it in a couple minutes. Okay. So anyway, I'm telling everyone, hey, I'm getting married. And everyone's kind of like shocked. And one of my editors, who's a very dear friend of mine, was vacationing in Maine, and she left a gift for me at my future husband's boat shop, and it was all wrapped in paper bags and stuff. And I opened it, and it's like this blue bowl, and it's like, all right, it looks used. Thanks a lot. I didn't really want gifts, but it's this big blue bowl. But then the note that went with the bowl. So the story is, this editor had been married for the first time very late in life at the age of 48, and a girlfriend of hers had given it to her. She had been given the bowl when she got married for the first time at 46. It was given to her by a girlfriend who had been married for the first time at like 41. So it's become known as the bowl of hope. And it's a really big bowl. So there's a lot of hope. But my challenge is to find someone, and if you know of anyone older than 51, woman getting married for the first time, please, I do not want to die with a bowl of hope. So, and the other part of your question was about my husband's relationship with my daughter. Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. It's healthy. Yeah. At first, I thought there'd be a little jealousy from her on her part, but no. She's a big girl. She's 21. She's all grown up. Yes. Okay, I'll start with the first one. I really was so happy with my portrayal by Mary Elizabeth Master Antonio. It took me a long time to learn the name. And I did. I was actually on book tour and had an opportunity to visit the Warner Brothers studios, and I met with the casting people and looked at these black and white glossy photos of people that they were considering. I thought, wow, this could be pretty bad. So I was frankly nervous about it. But then when I learned who they had chosen to play Linda Greenlaw, I was delighted. I mean, she's beautiful. And I thought they could not have done better, with the exception of hiring me to play myself. Which when of course, when I found out Clooney was playing the lead, I begged, right? Please let me play myself. And people ask a lot about, in the movie, there's like this, like an indication that you had a little something going on with Captain Billy Tyne. I was like, I absolutely did not, but if you want to believe that, it is Clooney. It's okay. It's like I started that rumor myself. Yeah. Exactly. And the other part of your question was, sorry. Oh, what my daughter thinks of the book. She was very on board with me writing this book from the get-go. Her hopes for this book, I think, are very mature. She hopes that someday, somewhere, someone will read this book and find the courage that she, and this is one courageous kid at the age of 15. She learned that her bedroom windows had been nailed shut from the outside, and she finally escaped. She physically ran from her abuser with him on her heels, chasing her. So, of course, when it was time for her to read the book, it was an unpublished manuscript. I said, Jesus, I've got to let her read it before it's actually published. And I handed her the manuscript. She was on spring break. And I said, please do not judge this book until you read the last page. And she promised, that would, but, later she emerged from her bedroom. Was I really that bad? And she'd read 3 chapters. And I was like, yeah, actually you were. And, please read the rest of the book. And so, she read the rest of the book. And she's very happy with it. She cried. As when you read it, you will too. It's a tearjerker. But it's a happy ending, yeah. Gail. Yeah, the biological family is in Missouri, and I've never met the mom, do not want to meet the mom. My interactions with the mother, I'll just say one little quick thing. When this girl ended up at my house temporarily, a woman from the state of Maine, Department of Human Services and Health, had to come out to make sure this place was fit and that I was okay to have this young girl. And I had a bunch of the island women around my kitchen table, and somehow it became my responsibility to call the biological mom and let her know that the person she either gave or sold her daughter to was gone, and that I had her daughter and why. So I did that, and thank God it was on speakerphone because no one ever would have believed her answer. And that was, I basically told her she gave her kid to a pedophile and he's in jail. And she said, I have a sinus infection. I didn't need to hear that today. She can't come back here. And that kind of sealed the deal right there with me. Like, yeah, no, she's not. That's not why I'm calling. Yeah, and there were other episodes as horrifying that are in the book. Anyway, okay, one last question. No? Okay, right there. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.